you would be amazed how dipsy doodle some of these glue sniffers are and can't figure this stuff out.
Hello and welcome to the Part-Time Gamers, the gaming podcast for people with full-time lives. I'm Cyranex, clocking in with my good friends, 9 of 12.
There.
And that one weirdo.
Breaking news from the medical center of Chumbawamba: if you get knocked down, just get up again.
Good advice. Very good advice.
Well, unless you have head trauma, then stay put. You probably have a TBI.
Yeah. Fun times. Speaking of, like, did I ever tell you guys, like, the time that I got a concussion, like a decent concussion?
Do you remember having it?
Vaguely.
Sorry.
So there's a funny stories behind it now that I'm, at least somewhat, functional as a human being. I was in second grade trying to jump over. It's the end of the day. I was hyped up and trying to jump over this chair. And I was not 6 feet at the time, so I had to step on the chair, which was wobbly. Chair went forward. I went backwards, got hit in the head with the floor, and briefly have like flashes of memory of being on the gurney, being wheeled into either the ambulance or the hospital. I don't remember which, and I think I woke up have memories like the day afterwards.
Much more better. Glad that concussion didn't cause any long-term issues. Wee woo.
Yeah. So before we get into Icebreaker, just finish off the story. There was a funny bit of that where about 10 years after that happened or so, I was at family dinner. It was just me and my parents and my sister. And my sister, I don't even know how it came up in conversation, but she said, "Hey, Sean, you remember that one time where you got your concussion and you threw up on Dad?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" I had no recollection of this whatsoever. Apparently, my dad was on duty. Got a call, said, "Hey, your son had a concussion. He's in the hospital right now. You should probably come see him." Comes in, full uniform, full, all of his equipment, everything on him. Makes the mistake of standing directly in front of me. Asks me, "How you doing?" I say, "Okay." And just throw up all over his uniform. Again, have no recollection of this whatsoever until about a decade afterwards when they finally brought it up in conversation. So, yeah, it's still one of the funnier moments that I can recall. Not necessarily it happening, but how it came back up. Well,
Literally.
not how it came back up, but how it came up in conversation. Yeah. Anyway. Let's go ahead and get to our icebreaker before I bite my
See
tongue
what happens
anymore.
when you get us all back together again?
Hey, I'm happy for this. I really am.
Me too.
All right, let's go ahead and get to our icebreaker.
Nice of you to drop by.
Never heard that one before.
All right, so this one I actually purposely kept hidden from you guys, so it's going to be a little bit more spontaneous. No real reason behind this question. I just thought it'd be fun to explore. Would you rather try to live through a zombie apocalypse or a robot uprising?
I'm so glad we're not starting on a depressing note.
Well, I saw your article's not on Ubisoft, so I had to have something depressing in here.
I know. I went soft this time, but I read the article, and we'll get to that, but I read the article and I had to post it and talk about it because I got a little weepy.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I'd say zombie apocalypse.
Okay.
I think a robot uprising would be much more difficult. I think if we're talking, Terminator style, and they do have, they have fewer weaknesses really, in a lot of ways. Like they're not going to have an uprising before they can do things like coordinate power sources and things that would be easy to stop them. And
True.
Like with zombies, I mean, especially if it's slow zombies, not stupid fast zombies. They can't even
Exactly.
climb. You know it's a headshot as opposed to you
Yeah.
played a lot of video games. You don't know where that robot's weak spot is if it's got
True.
one, right? Like,
True.
Right.
Well, if
and they don't need to eat anything.
Yeah.
Like you can't even starve them out.
Yeah. That is true too. But
Just
if
pull out the
video
extension
games
cord.
if video games are any indication, whatever part is glowing is where you need to shoot them. So we got.
I don't
that
think they're not going to allow us to have those heads-up displays, dear. I'm assuming they take control of all the tech, right? Which is going to lock up so many resources.
Yeah.
Like eek. But we could still do things like hunt and garden because they're not going to be competing for any of that.
Yeah. It's
not that I ever think about this kind of thing at all.
Which is I think one of the reasons why this is an interesting question. So I don't know.
Yeah, but are we talking cool? See, I look at it from a totality standpoint because, like, zombies. Okay, are we talking about like World War Z zombies, like in the movie, or are we talking about like Walking Dead? Coral, I mean, where are we going here? Because like, because zombies can be challenging because there's been many iterations. And I feel like in the case of, or at least, in fiction, there has been like zombies, they go all over the place. And then when it comes to a robot uprising, like there's been some great ways they've done it, but they haven't exactly like changed the playbook. Because like Terminator, and then when they redid Battlestar Galactica, which is one of my favorite series of all time, it's all just, hey, our masters made us smart. Too smart. And then it's like,
like Cybermen.
Yeah.
Heck with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Cybermen. No, that's a hard pass. And then with like Terminator, of course, the first two, it's like it looks cool, but then it's like frightening. And then you watch the other Terminators, and you're like, I might be 50-50. I could make it out of this. We'll see. Especially when you just kind of compare. It makes me think of, the question makes me actually think of, there's two books. One is World War Z, which was written by Max Brooks, who was actually Mel Brooks's son. And the book it is a very good book. And I love the framing of how the story is told. And then there's one called Robopocalypse that is almost a similar book. I mean, it's almost kind of cut and paste. And not to say that it's exactly that, but there are some parts you're like, oh yeah, somebody pulled the Control V. Like it's somebody. And what was interesting is right around the time they were ramping up making World War Z with Brad Pitt, Spielberg was actually tapped to direct a film version of Robopocalypse with Anne Hathaway and Chris Hemsworth, which got sacked because at one point, and this is like 10 years ago, but even more so, people were like weary about those kind of budgets. It was like a $270 million budgeted film. And this is 10 years ago. Like we're not even, I mean, you have one person who was a part of Batman, the Nolan Batverse, and then an Avenger and Spielberg. And it's like, you three couldn't pull this off. And it was the 20th Century Fox. 20th Century Fox and Spielberg was actually trying to tap two other studios to help, because the bill was going to be so massive as to what Spielberg was going to do. And it never got off the ground. Both books are great. I got to go with zombies. I mean, I'm right there with September on this one, because it is kind of like, robots are relentless. Like, let's think AI, but like all the time trying to kill you. Like, no. And then let's look at it this way. What if zombies are people that you end up not liking? And then it's like, oh my God, like this is vengeance served on a silver platter. And they're a zombie, so it's not like I'm killing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, real flappable with the rules.
Look at you to make it looking for the opportunistic angle.
Hey,
get to kill the people I know. All right,
it's an apocalypse. It's going to be like Zombieland. Like the only time I might be happy is if I kill or retire, these creatures, find Twinkies like Woody Harrelson.
I don't. For me, it's it might be a little bit up in the air. I think ultimately I'd still go with zombies for a lot of the reasons that you guys mentioned. But for me, it's like with robots, with the robot uprising, there's a lot of potential of them being able to take over technology. That is true, but the technology would still exist, and anything connected to anything can be hacked. It's a question of who has the skill to do it. And even if it's just like, if it's like a hive mind type situation, even if you're able to detach like one or two, a small number of robots from the system, also if it's a robot uprising, something as simple as an EMP, like just destroying the technology could solve the problem too. So there's that possibility.
Simple as an EMP.
Yeah. Just there's nukes everywhere, so just
simple as
anyway.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
and all of it turns out and turned into Don Cheadle from Ocean's 11. We'll get a pinch, like okay,
yeah.
yeah.
But,
I assume that like the robots being technologically based would cut off all of our access to anything like that before starting.
Possibly,
like we would lose our connectivity.
Yeah,
like that's that Facebook outage test a few weeks ago. Like that was phase 1.
Well, have either of you seen the movie The Mitchells versus the Machines?
Yeah,
it, not
long time
seen it.
ago.
Yeah, I just like you saying
so
that
good.
like them cutting off the connectivity, just like them just switching the Wi-Fi button over to off, and just like everyone going and rioting. Oh,
Yeah.
It's like, but also with robots,
And then our brilliant government would be like, "Oh, we have our sat connections. We'll just drop nukes for an EMP. It'll be fine."
obviously.
Yeah.
Anyway,
They'll fire up that old Tandy 100 that's sitting in the corner of the Pentagon.
Right?
Boop this.
I mean,
By the way, people that are so afraid of government surveillance, tech and surveillance, have never worked government jobs and seen what they're using.
well, yeah, I'm sure like most systems like that are still like Windows 98 based systems.
Oh my
and stuff.
gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Old Unix boxes, like
Yeah.
with green screen still in a lot of places.
And the reason why they haven't updated is because it would just take too much money to update the system. So they're just stuck with these old systems. I mean, even the machines I use at work use like some older version of Windows for their operating systems. But yeah, going on with like machines, I don't know. I think it'd personally be easier to be violent against machines because they're machines. They're not actually people. They might have a human like shape, but if they choose to go that way, but they're not people, obviously. So you're much more, I think, just psychologically much more able to destroy them than you would a zombie, which is literally a former person. And
but they're literally not squishy like people, so
that too.
Easier is
well, it'd be
just
easier
mentally easier, I guess.
Yeah, it meant like the mental block wouldn't be there because it'd be like, okay, I'm fighting against my toaster, rather than fighting against like my cousin. But the actual like ability to destroy them, that's what's up for debate. And then like, but for like some things with zombies is like the maximum amount of zombies that you can have is the population of the world. The maximum number of robots you can have is however much materials they have. So there's the possibility of there being a lot more machines than zombies.
Help.
Part of a way
They
to
just
look at
repurpose factories and keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I could see the tech not being necessarily 100% unless the robot or the AI or the hive mind program being, the master control, you think of like Tron, because they would really have to go above and beyond tech, like take that thinking and make it practical to go after people. Because right now, like I could splash a cup of cold water on a Cybertruck and it would rust to death.
Yeah. Well, and also like if the robot uprising happened right now, literally all they would do is just go and just like spray really bad graffiti on stuff. So I think we have a little bit of time I think, but
And how would they fund it? Like if they use if they use cryptocurrency, it's like, yeah, all we could get was paintball. Surrender, humans. Like that. We got no.
well,
Listen here, Bender. You pipe down.
it's like the thing is, if they went by cryptocurrency, it's like in the middle of making a robot, their funding would drop, and then like halfway through the next one, it would go back up. So you have just this mismatch of robotics of different costs. I get ultimately, I do kind of agree with the whole like zombies. I think would be because they're squishy, they would be actually easier to make re-dead. But they're also squishy and have lots of blood and organs and stuff in them, which
that would be the best name to call them. That like instead of like Skynet or the Master Control Program, here come the squishies.
It's like, and that I do still have my. If I can get out of here, move stuff back here.
This is great audio content.
Yeah. I mean, I still have my zombie mace literally like right here, so I am prepared for that.
And this was a random question.
Maybe.
Yeah, you just happen to be prepared.
Exactly.
Anyway, yeah. I've had that thing for like 5 years now. But yeah, I do kind of like these random would you rather questions, and I thought that was kind of an interesting one. But yeah, I think
I thought my question was very good.
I thought your question was very good as well, but I wanted it to be a surprise. So it's like, and to answer your question, my flavor would there was actually have you heard of the alcohol brand Not Your Father's?
Yes.
Yeah. They used to have a Not Your Father's Mountain Ale, which basically was an alcoholic version of Mountain Dew.
Oh.
And it tasted amazing, and I have not been able to find it in years. They just I think the company got bought out and they axed a bunch of the flavors. Just sad because that was my favorite one. Oh, anyway, completely different question.
Mountain Dew, so
it's like if you gave me long enough, I could probably pick out a Mountain Dew bottle from my office area. But anyway, instead of going to a completely different question, let's go ahead and get into our water cooler talk.
You get that thing I sent you?
Yeah,
Chipotle, damn you.
All right, Ember, let's go ahead and get into your article about arachnophobia mode in WoW.
all right. Well, next. I mean, you gave it away. That's it. That's all it is.
Well,
I was going to start with, after 20 years, World of Warcraft, Blizzard has decided to give us all crabs. It's a much better opening. So they are giving World of Warcraft is getting an arachnophobia mode, and what they're doing is, and it's not just for the expansion, but the expansion. What? I'm being waved quiet. Like everybody has to stop laughing first.
Top that.
Okay, I will
we
admit
should just have the show
that
over.
That was perfect delivery.
That was amazing. Oh, that was amazing.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I got nothing. Like, I'm just gonna go to the beach. Everything's solved.
So Nerubians are heavily featured in the new expansions coming out, and there were developers saying like, do we have to? I kind of don't really, with the spiders, and they're like, yeah, we really want to. Like, this is the story. And so, but they went ahead and they looked into it, and found, oh my gosh, this is not a small thing. As soon as this came out, actually, my husband saw this article and sent it to me to send to a friend of ours who is so arachnophobic. Like, Lord of the Rings is his favorite thing. He watches it all every year, but like, he will cover his face until the spider stuff is over.
Yeah.
Like, he even though he's watched it every year for like ever and ever. So yeah, enough people are seriously arachnophobic that they decided to do this, and it works in old areas too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of these arachnophobes that are going to be able to go enjoy some content that they just ran away from.
Yeah.
But they're turning them to like crabs. Like so,
Yeah.
I don't know what the crossover is, but this is the solution they have. I guess they're kind of a little pinkish, and they've turned all the spiders into crabs. If you have arachnophobia mode on, and you can turn it on or you can turn it off. So cool.
And what actually surprised, like I scanned through the article earlier, and one of the things that really surprised me was in like the fourth paragraph when they said, where they're saying like Satisfactory is one of the first, if not the first game to have an arachnophobia mode. I didn't realize that this was something that was so recent because they did that in 2019.
Yeah, a bunch of games have been adding this bit by bit.
Yeah.
Just in the last couple of years, I've noticed it more and more. Can I also add how cool it is? Like, is this predicted by South Park? Like, now we're getting crab people. Like,
Whiteberg
Yeah. But yeah,
games.
they say, they explain in this why the reason why it's crabs is because they have a similar size to the model. It has the same hitbox and everything, so they don't have to change a lot of the
it
mechanics.
makes perfect sense
Yeah.
to think about, the modeling and the engine, that this would be a really easy way for them to do that, especially making it retroactive.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's just I thought this was a thing for a lot longer than, the last 5 years, but apparently it, yeah. I do think it's funny. I've seen the arachnophobia mode in Grounded, and honestly, I think the arachnophobia mode, it's kind of interesting because it has different levels. So you can one level reduces the number of legs to 4, another one reduces the eyes to 2, another level brings it eventually it just becomes literally these two just weird looking blobs with 2 eyes. I think that is actually scarier than just seeing the spiders, to me at least. But I do think I'm always the kind of person that's the more accessibility options, they're never a bad thing. Being able to have things like an arachnophobia mode, having colorblind mode, having all these different options to help people play the game. It's never a bad thing.
Yeah.
Even if it's not something that you struggle with. Like I don't have any issue with arachnophobia. I don't have any motion sickness or anything like that. I'm one of the fortunate ones that doesn't have to deal with all these things. I still think these options are great for people.
Yeah, I'm really happy for my arachnophobic friends. I've had to play a game or look up the game or play a little further in something like WoW back in the day when I was playing, and because of friends who were like, I'm not going to go into the area yet. Let me know if there are spiders, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go look. It's like real life. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'll go look for the spider, honey. It's okay.
Yeah. But even my dad, he had this really traumatic spider experience when he was really young. And he's former Marine, former retired police officer, and fairly tough guy. And he once literally pulled a gun on a spider. So he's not fond of them. So
if I can get a no scorpions mode, that'd be great.
yeah. All right,
So
Theo.
what do you got, Theo?
Yep.
See, now I got to come up with something to top her intro. Okay.
I'm
You
not
did
even
at
gonna
the
try.
top of the show.
Well, true.
Well, my article, so 35 years ago, Nintendo gave something to put in young people's hands to give them a good time.
And it wasn't
no,
drugs.
September's are still better. Yeah. So believe it or not, the Game Boy is 35 years old as of today, as far as its release. And, it is mind-blowing to think, well, number one, 35 years ago, which, means, hey, colonoscopies coming up. Woohoo! But it's it's weird to kind of look back. I mean, we have so many gaming consoles now, play on our phones, but as you go through the article, this was very much kind of it was one of those things where Nintendo, as per usual, didn't want to compete with other consoles. Like even back then, their mindset was like, design the user experience. There's going to be consoles, there's going to be competitors down the line. They had Sega back then, but really Nintendo, I mean, obviously, and it's still around today, but it's one of those things where what can we do to create a user experience like no other? And at that time, it was handheld gaming. And it's mind-blowing to think that during its time, it sold 118 million units.
Wow.
That's bonkers. Like when you stop and kind of put it all in perspective, and yes, many consoles get sold now, but like back then, 118 million units over its span is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, considering like even nowadays, when a game gets like 1 million units sold, it's a big advertising point for them. It's like 118 million units though.
And that's just the systems. That's not including, of course, Dr. Mario, and of course, the game that most of them came with that had probably our first interaction with a song that was stuck in our head all day that we didn't, and that was the theme to Tetris.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still believe that song is like Russian mind control and we just never caught on. But having said that, it's so interesting to kind of look back and see what we have in front of us and going forward as far as like the kind of impact this device made and how it really set. Because I remember when it first came out and I actually had one, like many people, obviously the first thing was it's not in color. But it was something where it was like, because up until this point, you had like those games with just the blips. It was a hunk of plastic and it was like the football and nothing really did anything. But it was literally a case of, wait, so that thing that's in my room, I can carry it in my hand. And granted, it may not be the same, but I can do that here. And once again, this is where Nintendo really started to, I think, develop that mindset of Nintendo's going to do Nintendo things. And the last thing they're going to try to do is do what everybody else is doing. And even when you look at like going forward, like units and other consoles, many things they did never was meant to kind of compete against other consoles or other companies. Nintendo has chose to set themselves apart in the sense of, I mean, what I've always kind of seen from them, even now with like the Switch, unless of course you play the Mortal Kombat 1 for the Switch, and then you might throw that thing across the room easily.
Yeah.
The game and the Switch possibly. But having said that, they've always kind of played in their own pond. Like they made their bones in such a way to where they're going to do what they do on their terms. And it really kind of started here. So, I mean, I had two, and then I had like a Game Boy Color. And I remember when they were talking about bringing out color versions, and people were like, yes, they're going to do this in color. And what they did originally was they put like this film over the screen, and it was a different color. And you were like, oh, you gave us color. Just the one.
Yeah.
So, but looking back and looking at so many games that were so great and so many memories, and I mean, 35 years, you don't really think about it until like these anniversaries hit and you kind of hear about it. And then I remember like thinking, like reading this today and kind of looking back on it, I'm like, wow, I was so idealistic and the world was so great and everything was happy. That doesn't exist. No, that's not entirely accurate. But having said that, like for so many of us, I mean, I think that's where a lot of our gaming started. So it's a great article. It gives you kind of ins and outs, obviously, about them kind of taking this leap of faith as far as making this, and I guess it worked out for them. I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah, yeah, I think it worked out for them. I'll. I also wanted to mention on the in the article, there's a they talk about the actual like Nintendo, the opening Nintendo screen whenever you put in a new cartridge, how that was it was programmed into every cartridge they did, so it was also kind of a deterrent for bootleg versions of it that didn't have that. But they just have a picture of just a plain image of the Nintendo logo on the screen and a caption under it that says, "If you can hear this picture, it's probably time to schedule your first colonoscopy."
Yes.
After you mentioned that, it's like, so that's like,
Mhm.
yeah, that sounds about right. But yeah,
Because it would boot up and then it would scroll and it would go.
yeah,
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 such good days. And I had, Castlevania, Contra. Once again, we talked about in a previous show about my love of Konami, and this
yeah,
system had such a huge hand in that. So many great
Yeah.
memories, and even when you go back, like kind of low tech, like show kids. Somebody I dated a few years back, she had two small kids, and I bought like a retro Super NES.
yeah,
And she was under the impression they weren't going to enjoy this. They were going to think it was silly and outdated. And I said, yeah, but it captures the imagination, like even especially in like young folk, because it's like, this is cool in its own way. We have better stuff now. But then they kind of look over and go, so this is what you get. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah. And we thought this was amazing, and we still kind of do. So
yeah,
it kind of shows like footprints, as far as like that leading up to now. And I look at like
Yeah.
a lot of retro stuff, and I'm still jaded by it in such a way to where it still captures the imagination.
I mean, yeah, I mean, most of my real life friends that I'm still in contact with, I met playing Pokemon on Game Boy. It's like literally I think at the time it was either Game Boy Pocket or Game Boy Color, one of the two. Yeah, we used to be in the same youth group. We'd go into one of the back rooms before it started and just be battling each other in Pokemon. And that's how I met these people, and I'm still friends with them. 20 almost 30 years later. So sweet. Cool.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Makes me a little misty thinking about it.
Yeah. All right. I brought two articles that are related. Speaking of Pokemon, there, man.
Can we talk about what great content Helldivers keeps bringing us just by
Hey.
the nature of the game?
Well,
like
that
last
too.
time last time I brought Helldivers stuff, I had two articles, right?
Yeah. So yeah, these articles are linked together. So one of the things that they have in the game is what are called major orders, which are like community-wide objectives. And one of them recently this week, the objective was to kill 2 billion Terminids. It's a very big number. And they gave us 6 days. The community ended up killing 2 billion Terminids in less than 12 hours. So
Wow.
yeah, it was like literally that morning I was at work. There's a website called helldivers.io that gives you, it keeps track of the major order, whatever the personal order is for the day and all that jazz, keeps track of all of it and has online. I checked that morning and the order had just started. It was like 8:00 in the morning. It had just started, and I looked at it. It's like, holy crap, this is a lot. And I figured it's like, okay, I'm going to be able to, 6 days. Okay, that seems like a fairly reasonable amount of time. We should be able to do it. Okay. By time I got home and the kids were in bed and I was able to sit down and actually start playing the game, the rewards came up on my screen as soon as I logged in, waiting for new major order. Kind of weird. And yeah, then I read an article the next day. It's like, yeah, it was finished within 12 hours. But there's the second article I added is a potential explanation for why it took so little time. So there's a Redditor who was following the numbers, not just how many kills were, because there is a tracker on the mission table that shows you how many kills there are community wide, and also you can track how many kills are in the major order. So he's keeping track of those numbers and discovered that the number going towards the major order was triple the number of what was actually being counted. So the theory goes that they counted the major order the same way that they do the personal orders. A little bit more of an explanation. The personal orders, as long as someone on your team is going after the personal order, it counts for everyone on your team. So in theory, if you say got 500 kills in a mission and you have 4 people on your team, it would actually count it as 2,000 kills because it counts as 500 per player. So that's why he suspects that the number went so quickly, is because it was like on average tripling the amount.
Gee, that's a big oopsie.
Yeah. And, and Arrowhead, I'm sure because Arrowhead gave us 6 days to complete this, that was not the intention, but it was an oversight, because I think this is was the first like kill count oriented major order that they've done in the game so far. So it was probably just an oversight, and they didn't acknowledge this in any way. It's still just in theory, makes sense, but they didn't acknowledge it. They just said, "Hey, thanks for all your effort, your rewards. I was surprised that you were able to complete it in this amount of time." And behind the scenes, it's just like, "Hey, Jim, you should probably fix that for next time."
Right?
Seems like a biggie.
Yeah, I don't know why the developer's named Jim, but that's the first name I could think of. But
And now they have to like come up with another order really quickly, right?
Well, no, they
thought
did.
They had a week.
Yeah, they came up with a new order right away.
Okay.
Which, well, I think it did take a day for them to come up with a new one, which is defend 10 planets, which is a pretty big deal. That's going to be very difficult to do. So it seems like they kind of seesaw between this, like, okay, this major order is going to be fairly easy. We expect everyone to do it. And then they seesaw the other direction. It's like, we don't expect them to complete this like at all. And like they kind of seesaw back and forth that way, and which is okay. I mean, you can, if you just keep on playing the game, keep on doing the personal orders, all that kind of stuff, you're able to get enough medals to unlock everything fairly decent amount of time. So it's not a super big deal to me, at least. But yeah, I thought those 2 articles together were kind of interesting. Just the how surprising it was to complete that order so quickly, and then the potential explanation for why it was completed so quickly. But yeah, still really
A bit of a bummer. It's kind of cooler to think that everybody just got to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is a massive number. That, like, when I first saw that, it's like, oh yeah, 2 million terminids. Okay, that shouldn't be that. Oh wait, there's 3 extra zeros. Holy crap! Yeah. I mean, yeah, we have to kill a number of terminids equal to a quarter of the world's population. Awesome. And it happened in 12 hours. So it was surprising, and I thought that was a cool little set of articles. I'm still really enjoying Helldivers. It's really fun. Again, just love co-op games like that. But we talked about all that.
Name.
Yeah, we talked about that last week, so we'll continue on. Yeah, before we get back to work, I just wanted to mention our Patreon, patreon.com/PTGcast. If you like our incoherent ramblings, you can contribute to our paychecks by going there. $1, $5, $10, all helps us out. We really appreciate anyone who's willing to do that for us. It's patreon.com/PTGcast. And with that, let's go ahead and get back to work.
Morning break is over. Morning break is over.
And yes, I did finally fix the bots in the chat room on Twitch. So today we're going to be finishing up our series of The Same But Different. And we're going to be talking about Risk of Rain. I have Risk of Rain 1 and Returns in quotation, or no, parentheses, because Returns is basically a remaster, remake of the original. They're effectively the same game, just kind of updated. So they're kind of interchangeable between those two. So I have it listed as one parentheses returns. We're also going to be talking about Risk of Rain 2. They're originally developed by Hopu Games and published by Gearbox Publishing. I did recently see that Risk of Rain 2 was fully acquired by Gearbox, and further development of the game is from Gearbox rather than Hopu. Risk of Rain Returns is currently $14.99 on Switch and Windows via Steam. Risk of Rain 2 is $24.99 on Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch, and Windows via Steam and Epic.
And Risk of Rain 1 was not published by Gearbox. It was published by someone else.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I saw a really cool little whole show on this. And did you know that the developers were like a couple of guys doing a school project for computer programming? Yeah.
Yeah, I read that. Yeah, I read that on Wikipedia, that it was these two guys that were just doing a project and ended up developing it themselves. And was it, I don't remember what the engine was, but yeah.
I forgot the engine. I didn't take a note. But then like when they did a GoFundMe or Kickstarter because they were trying to pay for the music, is when it started to get all this momentum, because they raised way more, like over $30,000 when they were looking for $7,000 to pay this musician to write the music. It got all this attention, and they were able to add all this stuff, and then they got the attention of the studio that asked if they could publish the first one. But yeah, Gearbox that published the second one, and they did sell the IP to Gearbox now.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. Again, I love the indie scene for games, because we're getting more and more of these kinds of stories where it's like one or two guys just make a game, and it happens to, it catches fire, and it just catapults this whole career, this whole series.
It's like a for gamers by gamers, right? They're like, we like this. Like,
yeah, yeah. So, and I think of the games that we've talked about this month, this is actually, I think, the one that has the least amount of changes, at least mechanically, from the first one to the second one. Even though the perspective is different. So Risk of Rain 1 and Returns is a side-scrolling platformer roguelike. They're both roguelikes, but the first one's side-scrolling platformer, the second one's a third-person shooter.
It's also 3D and has flying, like the entire range of movement.
Yeah.
Is different.
Yeah. But what I mean by...
They did neat stuff, I thought, keeping the enemies through all that change in development, the maps and the enemies being kind of true to the original form.
Yeah.
Is kind of cool.
Yeah. But yeah, like what I mean by it being mechanically very similar is they're both roguelikes. They both have basically the same kinds of weapons, the same kind of characters, the same kind of items you can pick up, same kind of enemies, the same kind of premise between the different levels. A lot of those mechanical things are similar between the two, other than, one's side-scrolling, one's third person. And obviously
I understand the first one was a lot harder.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense because you do have that lack of a third dimension, and where you're trying to avoid just mountains of firepower coming at you. There's a lot fewer options that way. But yeah, it's just I've seen gameplay of both of them, and both of them are just like, whoa, so much stuff on the screen. It's like, what is happening? I hope I'm not dying immediately. But they're both fairly standard roguelike formulas. You're going through these randomized levels, fighting randomized enemies, finding randomized items, that kind of stuff. You're able to find chests that you can use whatever currency is in there to open up and find different items. There's certain items that are activated that you can only carry one of. There's items, there's a bunch of items that are stackable, passive things that you can do, that you can have. And then there's about there's more than a dozen different kinds of characters, different kinds of classes you can choose from as well. The most basic of which, the one that you start with, is the commando. But all of them have a vastly, like a very varying style of gameplay for those classes, which I think is really cool. It makes it so that it's like, okay, I've been going through this with this character for a while. Let's switch it up, try a different character. This one's got like a melee build. He focuses on regaining health, or this character has long range piercing shots that I can use. It has a lot of variability with those different characters, and then on top of that, all the variabilities that you get from a roguelike. Being to say, okay, well, I'm getting a lot of this one kind of item. It's like, okay, I can go a very heavy defensive build, or, I have an item that allows me to get like 13 extra jumps. So I'm never touching the ground again. That kind of stuff, which
I said this is the some of the strength of both these games is the replayability.
Yeah.
And it's for that, because you can do it beginning to end, but you can keep doing it differently.
Yeah, exactly. And one element I thought was really well thought of, is the scaling of the difficulty. Because specifically in these ones, there's actually a timer that's going, that and once the timer hits the top of it, it'll reset, and it increases the difficulty each time it does that. And it does that even if you're in the same level. So it's what's kind of unique about these games is it gives you that sense of decision making of, okay, do I want to keep on going through this level and trying to find more items, kill more creatures to get more experience and stuff like that. But the longer you stay in the levels, the higher the difficulty is going to get. Or do you want to try to speed run it a little bit where you keep the difficulty low, but you're not quite as powerful? So it has this kind of decision-making aspect to it, which I think is kind of interesting. It's not one that I haven't seen that in a whole lot of games at all, roguelike or otherwise.
Yeah, I can't think of another one where difficulty goes up on a timer.
Yeah. And another
that's awesome, but messed up.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a little stressful. It seems stressful.
I can imagine.
You're still alive? Oh no! Yeah. It's like they're just
this
getting
is fun.
angry.
Where's my anxiety meds?
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of games where like the difficulty goes up like as you advance in a level, or things like that. But this one, it doesn't. It's just based on a timer, and it's. One thing that I think is kind of funny, they have like the way that they do the describe the difficulties in, especially is at least in Risk of Rain 2. I think the highest difficulty I saw was literally just like just like evil maniacal laughter that extends longer than the window that it's in, which I think is hilarious to just seeing that. It's like it's not technical or anything, it's just maniacal laughter.
Not creepy at all.
Yeah, but and yeah, it's just even the little bit of like Risk of Rain 2 that I've seen, it gets crazy how much stuff is in there. Just not just the number of enemies, but the kinds of enemies, the sizes of the enemies, how many different effects are going on from the enemies and your characters as well. Like I remember watching one of my streamer friends playing that a while, like last month, a month or two ago or something like that. And they got this ability that basically turned them into this flying fire sandworm looking thing that they just flying around through the enemies, catching them on fire. It's I think
what was I? Oh no, I lost track. I think one of the really neat things I saw too was one of these guys, one of the initial developers, taught himself the 3D modeling.
Oh, really?
When they got the ability and the backing to go ahead and with the publishing from Gearbox and everything to go ahead and make it 3D, he taught himself, the same one who made the assets for the first game. And that's also part of the remastered one.
Yeah, Returns.
Returns came out because they got a really big following. One of the things those guys did was they were focused on building a community while they were developing the first game. They was like, they want community behind this. It was part of their mission. They set up, forums, and they were very active with their community. And then, even though it got it got good reviews quickly, and it built a huge community. So then it was just like still an indie game, just published by someone, kind of a cult following situation. But when they went to go 3D with 2, it was a huge curve. It was because there was still, at that time, they had hired one other person. They had 3 guys, and one of them was teaching himself to do 3D modeling, and thought he could, take the assets he had. And that's not really how that works.
Yeah.
So they put out that kind of returns to fill that gap while they worked on Risk of Rain 2.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
still just a couple guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can learn to do this while I'm going to college. No problem.
Yeah, it's a bit more than I could do, but yeah. But it is impressive how well the original game translates into a 3D environment too. I think, like I said, these two, I think mechanically are very similar. Just the biggest difference is the perspective. So, which I think is great, because then it's like, okay, you can have a very similar experience mechanically between the two, but you can choose what kind of perspective you want and still have.
I think some people really, really like one over the other.
Yeah.
I mean, do you love platformers?
Yeah.
But a lot of people just hate. I'm bad at platforming. I feel like the more, like, 2 would be much better for me. It's it's a big open world.
Yeah.
To mess with.
Yeah. I mean, same thing for me. I mean, as evident by, however long ago it was when we did Mega Man, I am terrible at platformers. I'm abysmal at them. So yeah, I would probably go with Risk of Rain 2 as well. I'm much better with that kind of environment, being able to move around in 3D space like that.
I love platformers.
I'm a lot less disappointed in myself falling off a cliff when it looks like a cliff than I just, fell off that board in Mario Kart or in Mario and just went off the edge or missed the thing going through the air in a jump. Jumping platform to platform is stressful, and I hate myself when I fall. Yeah. But if I'm actually falling down a cliff, at least I'm getting that entertainment.
Or at least everything is content, I guess.
You got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
I love platformers. I know we talked about Mega Man before, and this one, talk about like such a radical difference between the 2 points. Because looking at this and sampling it, and then because I had to have a moment where I was like, there was a Risk of Rain 1, so it didn't really click for me or anything like that, and that happens all the time. Of course, also real quick, I love the title because it was like Risk of Rain. Like, the Weather Channel sponsored this? Like, okay, that's cool. But going back and actually finding the first one and then comparing the two, it's like, I mean, obviously there's many things they put in there, but when you talk about like going from platforming to this, where it's like the equivalent of like, okay, so you're driving a Ford Focus for a year and you're so used to it, and then your next car just waiting for you in the middle of your driveway is a Ferrari, and it's like, oh yeah, we did a little tweaking on your Ford Focus, and it's like a little.
Yeah. But yeah. Oh, also, I just realized there's a little bit of tiny text underneath it that says Risk of Rain of Bullets. So that makes more sense.
Well, I saw stuff about
Baghdad.
I saw stuff about the original programmer guys too, though, when they were looking for a title. They literally just wanted a common phrase that people would be familiar with.
Okay.
And the whole weather, like Risk of Rain, came up in basically a Google search of familiar phrases. And then they were like, yeah, I mean, there's lots of risks. You could die. That's a good name as any.
Well, yeah, like even...
Risk of Rain seems really detrimental. I mean, it doesn't feel weathery at all. So, the fine print works. But, I don't think I've ever seen, like, a quote-unquote meteorologist go, there's a risk of rain. Your umbrellas are useless.
Yeah. But, I mean, I like the fact that they kind of keep the theme throughout the game as well, because like even the difficulty settings are like light drizzle is easy mode and monsoon is the hard mode. So they keep that like weather terminology throughout it as well. Um, I mean, yeah, if you just go by the name, is like Risk of Rain. What does this doesn't sound like that kind of game? Oh, but it reminds me of like your guys' reaction when we talked about Turmoil. Um, how you're just like, what is
Yeah,
that?
the oil wasn't, the pun was not hitting.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah. But once you get into it, this and for the part-time gamer aspect of it, it's like a lot of roguelikes. This is meant for kind of short bursts of gameplay. You go through a run until you die, however long that is, and the runs seem pretty short. So it makes it really good for that real time or part-time gamer aspect of it. One other thing I forgot to mention. Oh, so these are co-op as well. Um, so I actually looked it up and I was kind of surprised. The first one and Risk of Rain Returns are actually up to 10 players. You can play up to 10 players online in the side-scrolling versions. In the third-person shooter versions, it's only up to 4. But it's another
thing that held up two was adding multiplayer, because it was both of them. It was always couch co-op, local co-op, but adding the multiplayer co-op was another thing that held up the release of it.
yeah. So and again, this is the kind of game that I would play. The fact that it's a co-op roguelike, cooperative shooter. I would really enjoy this. This has been on my wish list for a little bit now. It is kind of a niche game, so it's take it for what it is, but it is very highly regarded. Both games are very highly regarded, very well done. I'm not going to say in spite of there only being 2 developers, because they obviously knew their stuff enough to make this stuff. So, yeah, I think this is for the perspectives being so different on these games. I thought it was really interesting how similar the two really are when you break down the mechanics. So, definitely one on my radar. Definitely one I'm going to try out at some point.
It's good stuff. I
Indeed.
dug it, and the colors, especially for like number 2, are like,
Yeah.
ho.
Yeah, because
For both.
Yeah.
Even for one. Like, for a pixelated game like that, it looks really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even like Returns, even more so. I mean, the original game, it looks great still. I think the original came out in 2013. I can't believe that's 11 years ago. Jeez. Anyway, I refuse to acknowledge that.
Colonoscopies.
Yeah. But and then Risk of Rain Returns, they just made the graphics even better, updated the mechanics. I think they even added enemies and classes from Risk of Rain 2 into Returns. But yeah, then Risk of Rain 2, the art, does have a very distinct art style, specifically like the way they color things. It seems like there's not a whole lot of shading. It seems like it's much more solid colors for Risk of Rain 2, which it works for it. So, I thought that was, yeah, it's definitely a series to keep an eye on and try out at some point. All right. But I think that finishes out our work day. So, everyone, if you like what you've heard and like to help us out, you can give us a review over on Apple Podcast. You can follow my Twitch and/or the YouTube channels for our live recording Sunday nights, starting at 9:15 Eastern Standard Time. Or you can become one of our patrons at patreon.com/ptgcast if you'd like to help us out with our monthly paychecks. And we'd like to thank our board member Stephanie Hurst for contributing to us. We really do appreciate it. I also would like to thank September for upping her donation per month. I really do appreciate that too. Anyway, if you'd like to contact us, you can with our email, parttimegamers.cast@gmail.com. Or you can join our Discord channel. Link for that is in our show notes, and it's on the descriptions of our videos, and you can find it places. So thank you for listening. Everyone, please join us next week. We're going to be doing our game night. Next week, we're going to be playing Ultimate Chicken Horse, which still is just a funny name to me. It should be a blast. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It sounds like an Operation Iraqi Freedom like code name for a mission. Because they would name them so like just weird and not even like connected, so it was just like so innocuous, just kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh yeah, here's all this strafing. What are we calling it? Operation. Like I could see them doing that.
Ultimate Chicken Horse.
Ultimate Chicken Horse.
Yeah. So,
Game, and I have it, and I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be in Vegas.
I will actually be here for game night finally.
Nice. We'll probably end up getting Jess here too. She's been pretty active on our Discord and everything. I know she has that game, so it'd be nice to play with her as well. I'll see who else we can get. It'd be a fun night of just basically trying to mess up each other's play styles. So it'll be fun. All right.
It is. Hey, you're awesome. Watch me take you down.
Yeah. Hey, you're awesome. Here, have a crossbow that's pointed right at your face.
The
Everyone,
gift that keeps on giving.
yeah, I guess. Until it runs out of ammo. Anyways, I'm Sean. You can find this show and the rest of my work, the links to my socials, including our Discord channel, my Twitch, links to my Twitch and YouTube channels, and the link to the Apple Podcast listing using the link bit.ly/CI Productions. Remember, where can people find you around the internet?
Over to 9of12.com. That's NINEOF12.com. It'll point you to all my content.
And Theo, how about you?
Just kidding. Still at swellcast.com. Hopefully Rabbit and Red will be back up on May 2nd. And that's it for the moment.
All right. And if you're in our Twitch chat, I finally fixed the bot so you can get all these links by doing !PTG links. It'll show you all the links for all of our sites and our Patreon. Everyone, until next time, we are the Part-Time Gamers clocking out.